Transforming Lives, Learning for Lifelong Knowledge and Improvement. Video 3, Backwards Design of PLOs, CLOs, and Learning Experiences.
Hello, welcome back to the Transforming Lives video series. In video 1, we explored the differences between teaching and learning, and between objective and outcome. In particular, we saw that our learning outcomes assessment effort will produce nothing of value if we use objectives in place of outcomes. Backwards design was offered as a vehicle to create authentic, useful outcomes. The world is changing quickly. Continuous employment requires building and honing skills, competencies, literacies. As Heather McGowan says, we can no longer learn to work. We have to work to learn. We must constantly engage in ever-changing world, evolving our competencies and literacies to keep up and stay employed. Remember, it's about students learning transportable skills, not just completing content-centric tasks.
Recall at the end of video 1, we introduced backwards design to create PLOs, CLOs, and learning experiences. Starting with the goals of the college mission, vision, values, equity pledge, and institutional learning outcomes, we work backwards toward the learning objectives and course content, creating PLOs and CLOs and learning experiences that bridge learning and teaching. Let's look at the components of this process. The college mission. Chances are, unless you helped write it, you don't know what it says. The mission statement expresses the institutional purpose, function, and aims. In terms of student goals in their learning, notice what it says. The college offers quality, accessible, equitable, and innovative educational programs and services to students aspiring to achieve their academic, career, and personal development goals. The college empowers students to enrich our communities and participate meaningfully in today's complex world.
How much can our teaching do to fulfill these aims? Can we possibly cover through our teaching all the scenarios our students will ever face in preparation for their careers and personal development and ensure meaningful participation in a complex world throughout their lifetimes? Or should we instead focus on their learning, providing them the necessary tools and practice using them so they can engage, adapt, evolve? While the mission is the actual starting point for our work, it may be too vague to directly inspire development of our PLOs, CLOs, and learning experiences. But starting with it is the first step. It orients us to the ultimate goals of the educational experiences we provide and helps us avoid sliding back over to the teaching side of the house and trying, once again, to begin outcome development using our course content and learning objectives.
The vision statement, which conveys the long-term change desired by the institution, is a better starting point for CLO, PLO, and learning experience development. It's kind of hard to miss the notion of transformation here. Now, more than ever, education needs to be the tool for the substantive personal and societal improvement that leads to transformational change.
The coronavirus pandemic has underscored the need for a transportable employment skill set. When jobs go dormant or disappear, literally overnight, continuous employment demands a transferable skill set. The need to eradicate racial injustice mandates learning experiences that lead each individual to identify and evaluate his or her foundational biases and assumptions. Creating learning outcomes that identify these as goals for students, along with learning experiences that impart the learning outcomes, must be created and measured now. The values statement reveals the priorities of the institution. It provides us direction, a guide to the way students should look or be like when they complete their education with us. So to begin the PLO-CLO development process for your discipline, ask yourselves a couple of questions. First, what should my students look like or be like when they complete my classes and programs? In other words, what positive qualities or attributes should be apparent when the students enter a four-year university or the workplace? Second, if my classes were no longer part of a degree or certificate or pathway, what would students fail to get that they need? In other words, can I articulate the value my classes bring to this degree, certificate, or pathway in terms of student skills, values, habits, and traits?
Here is the start of the value statement. Notice that collaboration is valued by the college. In the first video, our learning outcome thinking interdependently is an example. These values apply to college staff as well. In fact, utilizing the material in this video will be an example of innovation as we faculty work to improve lifelong learning in our continuous improvement process. While not an example in this video, the habit of mind listening with understanding and empathy would certainly support the value relationship. Here is the conclusion of the values statement. This series promotes both relevance and integrity. The educational experiences that impart our learning outcomes will prepare every student for numerous jobs in multiple fields and provide them the self-awareness to do their part to eliminate racial injustice. Providing the transformative educational experiences for our students is definitely doing the right thing. You might want to pause the video just to review these values. It is crucial that equity also drive this backwards design. The MSJC Equity Pledge includes the following. We are dedicated to challenging our perceptions, biases, and blind spots through self-reflection and constant inquiry. Can we teach this, or must it be learned? What is the best educational delivery system to provide the tools and opportunities to challenge perceptions and biases?
If education is to be truly transformative, don't individual assumptions and biases have to be identified and challenged? The educational experiences we provide must include these opportunities. As outcomes are achieved, shouldn't each and every student's own biases and assumptions be confronted?
Our ILOs embody the mission, vision, and value statements. While the mission, vision, and value statements should motivate you to create learning outcomes and provide general direction in doing so, it is the ILOs that must align with your PLOs and CLOs. This means when you create a PLO, there must be a clear connection or alignment to at least one ILO. In future videos, we'll begin with the ILOs, identifying those that connect or align with the skills, habits, values, and traits naturally produced as students take your classes. Critical thinking will likely be a popular ILO for many programs, but communication, information technology and literacy, cultural relevancy, and the rest will be imparted by our learning experiences too. This video is just an overview, so we will construct examples of actual PLO and CLO statements and the corresponding learning experiences in later videos. In terms of following the backwards design, we now have the departmental programmatic PLO and CLO statements that align with the ILOs. Then the learning experiences themselves that bridge learning and teaching, which tie back to the learning objectives and course content in the course outline of record. This visual captures the entire backwards design path, from the mission, vision, values, and equity statements, back through the ILOs, PLOs, and CLOs, to the learning experiences, learning objectives, and course content. Once PLOs and CLOs that align to an ILO have been created, and the corresponding learning experiences are utilized in the course, the goals contained in the learning outcomes and mission, vision, values, and equity statements should be automatically realized by the students. Educational delivery is designed ahead of time to impart this learning. As the course and the learning experiences are delivered, the outcomes are achieved and the mission is realized. We'll conclude by contrasting this backwards design approach with what we have been doing. Prior to 1982, when Program Review showed up, we focused solely on teaching. The course content and objectives drove the learning experiences, which drove the tests, quizzes, and assignments, which determined the grades. In terms of improvement, anecdotal evidence shared during a department meeting, say, led to proposed improvements. If grades were low, we implemented a best teaching practice or updated the course outline of record. Unfortunately, this process was not data-driven, and therefore proposed improvements were not necessarily scalable. Learning and teaching were pretty much the same thing, and passing grades equated to sufficient learning. Program Review brought data to the table, but this data was based on grades, which do nothing to reveal gaps in student learning. So in 2002, SLOs showed up. They were meant to measure lifelong learning for each student, but we didn't know that, so we called our objectives outcomes and used existing materials and methods to generate assessment scores. Our assessment process consisted of throwing Hail Mary passes from our tests, quizzes, and assignments toward our ILOs, hoping for a miracle connection. Instead of using our existing tests, assignments, and quizzes to assess our outcomes, we need to align assessment of learning outcomes with our learning experiences. Since the learning experiences already provide discipline knowledge and impart the outcomes, skills, habits, values, and traits, we need to fully leverage them. In particular, we need to articulate, message, and measure the competencies and literacies learned and practiced in our courses and mastered by the end of our programs. Unless you already have outcome statements that do this, the habits of mind on the left-hand side of the screen are a good place to start. Once we make learning, not teaching, the foundation for education and its improvement, we will still teach, test, and grade as normal, but it will be learning outcomes assessment that drives educational improvement and ensures the goals of students, teachers, the college, and the service area are achieved. That is, our learning experiences will impart the outcomes, attainment of these outcomes will validate achievement of the ILOs, and improvement will be driven by our learning outcomes assessment process.
The videos that follow will provide examples of backwards design. Additional videos will provide the training for creating PLOs, CLOs, and learning experiences for your departments and disciplines. Thank you for watching.
For more videos, visit the Transforming Lives channel.